Today is the 40th anniversary of the release of Return of the Jedi. To celebrate, I'm going to talk about everything I love about the film, moments big and small. Let's get started. I can't believe I'm going to start this video by giving away one of my favorite little trivia facts. I'm going to help someone beat me someday, but it's always stood out to me that Return of the Jedi is the only Star Wars movie whose crawl ends with 3 dots in its ellipses instead of 4, and I love that despite the numerous updates to the original trilogy over the past 4 decades, it's never been updated for consistency. The Lambda-class shuttle is such an iconic ship design, I often forget it didn't appear until this film, and then it was added to Episode 5 for the special editions. Moff Jerjerrod is a great character played so well by Michael Pennington. Despite being one of the baddies, he's immediately given humanity and even sympathy. The stakes are high for him because the audience saw how many Imperial officers Vader choked to death in The Empire Strikes Back. If you've never seen the character's deleted scenes, they are absolutely worth watching. And then Jerjerrod hears that the Emperor is not as forgiving as Vader, which makes him scary before he even arrives. That's such a great line. Heading over to Tatooine, 3PO giving Jabba's door the teeniest, tiniest knock in the galaxy and quickly assuming nobody is home is great. Bib Fortuna is another iconic Star Wars design, and it's wild that this one very sinister character spun out into one of the most famous alien cultures in the franchise. And I always want to say, "Ducha!" and Huttese along with him. I don't even know what that means. I love Jabba the Hutt's design as well, but I really love thinking about the meltdown people would have had if Twitter existed in 1983. Fans get upset now when books or comics undergo even minor retcons, but Jabba the Hutt was established as a completely different character in the old Marvel comics, and then they threw all of that out the window for the slug design. I can't even imagine what the reaction would have been if that happened today. Shout out to Salacious B. Crumb and the fact that he has a middle initial. His laugh is unforgettable. The idea of like a droid torture room in the depths of Jabba's palace is terrible. I hate seeing a gonk droid get burned, but also it raises so many questions, like who put pain receptors into a walking battery and why? I guess to keep it from mindlessly walking into danger, but it's one of those Star Wars things that's just silly to think about. I love the Max Rebo band. I play piano, and I have a collection of Max Rebo stuff scattered around my keyboard. I also really like Droopy McCool, but I like the entire band. Even Joe Yowza with all his screaming. The special edition changes aren't my favorite, and I like the original song Lopty Neck, but if we didn't get the changes, we wouldn't have Ristal Sant, who is one of Molly's favorite background characters. And I also have to admit that the opening riff of Jedi Rocks is pretty great. I find myself humming that horn section a lot. But speaking of Lopty Neck, I love that the song was composed by John Williams' son Joseph, who also performed the English version that was released and who also happens to be the lead singer of the band Toto. It's cool to see Boba Fett again during these scenes. I think we take it for granted now, but it's not like it was a guarantee he would still be around after The Empire Strikes Back. I need to give a shout out to Ula alongside Bib Fortuna for making Twi'leks iconic. I think it's pretty cool Femi Taylor came back to play her again for a couple insert shots for the special edition. I think it's hilarious. You can clearly see a Rodian in Greedo's outfit in several shots of Jabba's throne room, but A New Hope already established appearances of the same costume, so I guess that's just like a uniform or something. I love that Max Rebo covers his eyes when he sees a thermal detonator, as if that would help him at all. I always liked that Han's carbonite slab hung up on like a hunting trophy wall for Jabba, where you can see the head of a Tauntaun and a Jerba, both creatures from the previous films, not because it makes sense that Jabba would have gone hunting on Hoth, but simply because those are the props the art department had lying around. I think it's funny Leia didn't make any attempt to catch Han before he falls flat on his face. And I do love Leia's reveal. I remember being shocked it was her when I first saw the movie, and I recall being excited to get that action figure. I like the detail that Reese is covering 3PO's mouth when he's forced to hide with Jabba so he couldn't warn Leia. I would give anything for a Wookiee hug from Chewbacca. Luke's introduction is fantastic, immediately showing off his powers and raising questions about where his mind is at right now. He's dressed in all black and he's possibly using the dark side. Did he just try to shoot Jabba in the face? What is happening? I think it's funny you can see Dengar casually standing around in Jabba's palace. The Rancor is awesome and looks fantastic. That thing terrified me as a kid, watching it very gruesomely munch on the Gamorrean guard before giving that look to Luke. One of my best friends growing up had a bunch of Jurassic Park toys, and he had to not so politely ask me to stop shoving stuff long ways into his T-Rex's mouth, stretching it out, because it wasn't a Rancor and the toy wasn't built for that. I love that because this is Star Wars, the skull Luke throws to kill the Rancor has a name, or at least he used to. It was Bidlo Quirv. Oh, Malakili. Shout out to the actor Paul Brook, who makes you feel sorry for him and the Rancor with only seconds of screen time. Like Dengar in Jabba's palace, it's funny that you can see Bossk hanging out on the sail barge, not necessarily because anyone thought the bounty hunters should be there, more because they had the costumes and they might as well reuse them. I think the idea of the Sarlacc pit is great, the thought of being digested for 1,000 years is scary, but I mostly like that they found a way to make someone walk the plank on a desert planet. Luke literally springing into action is the coolest thing. My same friend with all the Jurassic Park toys also had a pool, and I can't tell you how many times we scraped up our chests trying to hop off the diving board only to grab onto it and weakly try to pull ourselves back up. And the green lightsaber, what an awesome moment. I love that it was born out of a desire to make the new weapon unique to the one Luke lost in Empire, but also to make it stand out against the blue sky. Lightsaber colors and their meanings are a huge deal to fans now, but often these developments are created for production and not lore reasons, and then the significance is made up later on. Boba Fett using his jetpack. It looks kinda wonky, but it's still awesome, and it's fun to think about how far we've come since then. Now we see dozens of Mandalorians flying around every week on Disney Plus, and it's normal. I love that Leia uses her chains to kill Jabba, a symbol of her capture and his control over her turned against him. Lando's scream when he's grabbed by the Sarlacc is one of those noises I can't help but imitate every time I watch the movie. R2 and 3PO sticking out of the sand is very funny, and I love the explosion of Jabba's sail barge. It just looks awesome. The fact that the first third of this movie is all spent handling Han's rescue is kind of wild to think about. I love it, but think it would have been handled very differently today, like that sequence may have been shrunk down to the opening 10 minutes or so just to quickly solve that problem and get on with the new story. But Return of the Jedi spends 37 minutes just being weird with all the aliens and puppets, and it works because it sets up Luke's arc, the potential of darkness within him, and shows off how far he's come as a Jedi in between films. It's so great to finally see the Emperor. He's mentioned in A New Hope, briefly seen in The Empire Strikes Back, and now he's fully revealed and of course played masterfully by Ian McDiarmid. It's wonderful how it worked out for him to continue playing the character for another 36 years, and so fortunate he wound up being such an amazing actor with incredible range. I love that Yoda basically says he'd rather die than answer Luke's questions about Darth Vader. The Rebel fleet and briefing room are super cool, and the advances in computer graphics compared to the briefing in A New Hope about the first Death Star are amazing. I love that Crix Medine had to wear a fake beard because his action figure was already in development with one. Poor Dermot Crowley. The establishing shot of the Rebel hangar is so cool, all those starfighters, including some that we had never seen before until now. Admiral Piet. I love that fan appreciation for his character led to his return for Episode 6. I think it would have been perfectly reasonable to assume Vader had killed him off screen after The Empire Strikes Back, but he's a great character, and I love even this small level of consistency. Scout Troopers are awesome new Stormtrooper designs. It's cool to see Chewie finally shoot his bowcaster, but most importantly, the entire speeder bike chase is amazing. I loved this sequence and its speed as a kid, and I still love it as an adult. Back in the day, anytime I would ride my bike even remotely near trees, I would pretend I was on Endor. Wicket. I loved the Ewoks growing up, and again, still to this day. There was a time when Return of the Jedi was my favorite Star Wars movie, and the speeder bikes, the Ewoks, and pretty much everything on Endor were big reasons for that. To be fair, back then, every new Star Wars movie I saw was my new favorite. My parents let me just watch A New Hope for a long time before revealing that there was more to see, and I was blown away every time. The Imperial Royal Guards are great designs. We're so used to the Empire being black and white, so having a splash of red really makes them stand out. Chewie's hair in this movie is something else. It's like he went and got a haircut to take his mind off of Han being frozen in carbonite for a year. The incredulous looks Han and Luke give to the Ewoks the first time they come out of the bushes are wonderful. I love the Ewok village. What kid doesn't want to grow up in a bunch of tree houses connected by rope swings? Han trying to blow out the flames before he is cooked alive is so goofy, but it always makes me laugh. In A New Hope, when 3PO tells Luke he isn't good at telling stories, I think of him telling the entire story of Star Wars so far to the Ewoks. Even though it's not in basic, it's easy for the audience to follow along, and he gets them all into the tribe, so I think he actually is a pretty good storyteller. Han making several demands of 3PO and then telling him to hurry up is a fantastic reminder of their dynamic in The Empire Strikes Back. The scene between Luke and Vader on Endor is so great, but my favorite part is at the end, when Vader is alone and he stares off at nothing for a few seconds, just to show the audience that there is conflict within him, no matter how much he denies it. I don't know a single person who doesn't love Nine Num, he's just great. And Poplu, he's also great, the most adorable little thief stealing a speeder bike that he can barely hold on to. I love that you can see the rebel putting on the scout trooper's armor as Han and the others infiltrate the shield generator bunker. Palpatine meeting Luke for the first time is all over the place in the best way. McDiarmid plays the Emperor as completely sinister and evil, but also chews up so much scenery later on as he teases Luke about the trap he's set. I love Ben Burt coming in to capture our rebel friends only to let out the best scream as he's knocked into the power generator thing. The arrival of the fleet to Endor is amazing. I love a good pilot check-in with red, green, and gray squadrons, and of course, I love seeing Wedge again. He appeared earlier in the briefing room, but Wedge popping up every movie is perfection. There is a reason he is so many people's answer when I ask them who their favorite side or background character is. He is the original Star Wars glupshido, to the point where I don't even think he really fits the description anymore. Everyone loves him, and that love is deserved. The B-Wing is a great new ship that I wish had more screen time. The A-Wing is one of my favorite starfighter designs of all time. I mean, obviously, Akbar screaming "It's a trap" has given Star Wars fans so much joy. I love the shot of the TIE interceptors swarming in. It looks amazing and so overwhelming, which is exactly the point. Again, I love the detail of Nick Sant or Rex or whoever you want to believe is in that scout trooper armor being held at gunpoint with the helmet off. Look, I know not everyone loves the Ewoks. People really didn't like them in 1983, but I think they're great, and they've only grown more intimidating over the years as we've experienced things like Ewok Hunt in Battlefront 2. That horn hits differently after you've been hunted by hordes of Ewoks in the dark. The space sections of the Battle of Endor are incredible. Just like The Empire Strikes Back was a big jump up from A New Hope, Return of the Jedi took everything to the next level once again. The Battle of Endor is one of, if not the best, Star Wars battles to this day. Okay, I don't love the death of Nanta the Ewok by any means. I remember being 8 or 9 and thinking it was the most cruel thing I had ever seen in my limited time watching movies, but it is an effective moment and there's a reason Star Wars fans remember it so well. I want to highlight Grizz Fricks, Red 5 in the space battle. I don't fully know why, but I always latched onto that poor pilot that delivers one line and then explodes. The quick little shots like that help sell the desperation and struggle of the rebel pilots, and to this day, if I ever got the chance to be in a Star War, I would want this exact role. I just want to scream something and explode in a starfighter, and I think a lot of that is because of characters like Grizz Fricks and Ekalark Yong. The shot of Luke and Vader crossing sabers in front of Palpatine's face while he cackles is amazing. Chewie commandeering an AT-ST with 2 Ewoks is so much fun, and I love the log traps to take care of the other ones. Han thinking he hotwired the door only to cause another set to close, and then the face he makes, I thought that was the funniest part of this movie as a kid. Swapping over to something that is not funny, the moment where Vader pushes Luke over the edge is incredible. I think some people conveniently forget this part of the movie when they're discussing Luke in The Last Jedi. Yes, Luke believed there was still good in Vader. He believed his father could be redeemed, but he also absolutely nearly killed him instead, only stopping when he realized his current path was the same as Vader's, a path of darkness that would lead to the loss of his humanity. The comparison between his father's robotic stump and his robotic hand, and then the ultimate rejection of darkness and the declaration that he is a Jedi, these moments in the Emperor's throne room are what make this movie an amazing and satisfying conclusion to the original trilogy. Of course, that all culminates with Vader's redemption. We never get to see his face, and yet we feel everything he's going through. When he finally decides to come back to the light and throw Palpatine down that pit, chills every time. Even with the added no, which I admit I don't like. I think it works better silently, but it does still work. I know even still to this day, Return of the Jedi gets some flack for repeating the Death Star, but they sure made the attack unique by having the starfighters fly into the space station. That's awesome. I love Akbar's slump into his chair as the Executor explodes, relief and sorrow combined, and it's all coming from this fish man. The unmasking of Darth Vader is fantastic. He's just an old, hurt, normal man underneath all that scary armor, because who else would he be? Underneath everyone's anger and pain is just a human, not a monster. I love that Wedge gets all the way to the end of the second Death Star's destruction this time, taking down the power reactor alongside Lando. The shots of the Falcon flying out of the superstructure are awesome. I remember reading on the box for the video game X-Wing Alliance that it would let us take part in the Battle of Endor and the flight into the Death Star, and I was so hyped. It's all I wanted to do. I need to play that game again. Darth Vader's funeral is a wonderful way to say goodbye to the villain, as well as conclude Luke's journey in these films, and I love that it was basically filmed in George Lucas's backyard as a pickup shot. I'm pretty neutral on the changes to the ending. I'm a fan of Yub Nub and Victory Celebration, but I certainly remember seeing Coruscant for the first time in the special edition and my eyes going wide, knowing we would be seeing it again in about 2 years in Episode 1. But the ending party in the Ewok village is where it's at. I love seeing all the rebels finally able to relax and party and hug one another. It makes me misty-eyed every dang time seeing all of our heroes who separated for the last act of the film come back together and hug and embrace, and honestly the moment that really gets me every time is Luke hugging Wedge. They didn't need to include that. Wedge played a minor role in all 3 films, but he's like the face of the normal rebellion. He wasn't battling the Sith or his evil father or grappling with some huge galaxy-shattering destiny. He was fighting oppression because it was the right thing to do. I love that he got even a small moment at the end of the trilogy where he greets the main character as a friend and equal. I have no hard opinions on the Hayden versus Sebastian debate. I like them both. I'm just glad to see Anakin back in the light side of the Force alongside Yoda and Obi-Wan. And that brings us to the end. That's everything I love about Return of the Jedi, or at least everything that jumped out to me as I watched the film most recently. There's always more to love I'm sure I didn't mention, so I want to hear what you think is great about Return of the Jedi in the comments. What are your favorite parts? Let me know. And if you enjoyed this video, you can see others in the same series at the playlist in the cards. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.